I often think about metal like how the government warns kids about drugs. You start with the well-produced rock bands, this working as a gateway to get you hooked on the grunge, which in turn brings you to the adrenaline-filled attitude of punk rock, eventually leading you to this. I had heard the Korn songs Blind and Adidas in a friend's house, and I was absolutely obsessed with Freak on a Leash, which was played with some frequency on MTV, but at 12 years old when I brought home Korn's third album, Follow the Leader, I was not prepared for how disturbing some of the music on that record was. Into my son's eyes. It was too much for me. I told my mom about the album, and after she listened to it, she made me return it. Now, you'd think that this jarring experience would put me off the band, but strangely, it just made me want to know more about them. When I'd see Korn in interviews, I didn't see the brooding misfits that one would expect to produce such dark music. I saw these clean-cut guys in their 20s with smiles and jokes, and for the most part seeming pretty at ease. But you also had John Davis, their frontman, this weird, soft-spoken dude who came across as almost effeminate. Heavy metal was a genre that had fostered this image of the most manly of manliness, where you needed to outman the other men with even more manliness, and these new meds are making it hard to ride like a human being. Then there's this dude in one of the biggest metal bands in the world, no posturing, no bravado. This instantly made John fascinating. I know there were plenty of tough guys that liked metal growing up, but the majority of us were the weird kids, the weak kids, the fucking kids that got bullied and picked on in school. John's lyrics didn't build up any sort of tough guy facade. They were about how fucked up he was, dark and gritty and devoid of all hope. And it was like for the first time, I had felt seen. Through the following years, I still enjoyed Korn's music in a limited capacity. My mother did not have a problem with the more radio-friendly singles, even letting me stay up to record the MTV show Super Rock, the last vestige of heavy metal on UK MTV. I remember pressing record in the hopes that Freak on a Leash would be played, and then leaping with joy, seeing that it was the first video of the hour. I was so pleased, and Mum gave me this big smile, seeing how happy that had made me. And goddamn, I went to bed that night feeling wonderful. My mom was probably the most financially responsible person I knew, and it was because of this that I never felt the full extent of how poor we were growing up. She came up with this idea where for a whole year she put aside a few pounds each week, culminating in what would be about $350 in today's money, so I could go have a shopping spree. At 14 years old, in the summer of 2000, she brought me into town, and I got my first ever skateboard from the G1 skate shop on O'Connell Street, along with a bunch of video games, and it was one of the single greatest days of my childhood. There were still abandoned Korn records in the house, but I negotiated with my mother so that I could purchase just one Korn album, because at this point I was a big fan in desperate need of more of their music, and I think my mum took pity on me. In an attempt to sidestep the raw darkness I'd experienced before, I chose a different album and ended up getting something even worse with Life is Peachy. Seriously, that record is just so fucking twisted, but you know what? This time I was ready, and I adored it. That album was listened to continuously for the next year, becoming part of the soundtrack of my youth, along with Significant Other by Limp Bizkit. The following year, Mom once again gave me another spectacular shopping day. I'm wondering at this point had she forgotten about the one album limit, because that day I bought Korn's self-titled album and re-bought Follow the Leader, and she never said anything. I did love a lot of songs from both those albums, but the only other release that I could sit and listen to in its entirety the way I could with Life is Peachy was Issues, which I bought a few months later. That album was and is just superb. There was something that Korn did that the other bands of the time never quite tapped into, and it started in 1997 with the release of the mini-documentary Who Then Now. I know this is going to seem hard to believe in the age of social media, but access and info on the lives of our favourite artists was almost non-existent back then. Sure, you had interviews which, much like today, felt quite meticulously put together and rather guarded. In the 2000s, we had the MTV Diary series, which was cool, but it still came across as a very clean and carefully packaged product. Who Then Now was completely different. Part documentary, part music video collection. It was a mixture of gonzo-style filmmaking following the band as they recorded their first two albums, full of drinking and the silly shenanigans of a bunch of young dudes enjoying life. It was like we were granted access into their day-to-day experience, most of which wasn't made to look glamorous or exciting or extravagant. Even the talking head-style interview sections didn't feel polished or rehearsed. No one came across as slick or well composed, and actually at times gave the impression that they had no idea what the f they were doing. It was frank and honest and very easy to watch. There was a friendliness to the whole thing, and we, the audience, felt welcomed into this band and their lives. And this was the genius of Korn. They made us feel like we were part of something, not just fans on the outside looking in. I didn't get to see Who Then Now until 2002 with the release of Deuce, and holy fucking shit, it's hard to explain what this acid trip of a DVD did to my 16-year-old brain. Instead of a sleek, simple set of menus, we were presented with The Asylum, where you had to click on a bunch of random objects which would either bring you to a specific clip or to another area of the hellscape which we now occupied. One of the areas even required a fucking password, which okay, they did give you on a little slip of paper inside the box. I lent the DVD to a friend of mine who wanted to watch Korn's music videos, and I told him that they weren't that easy to find. He asked me what I meant, and I didn't even know how the fuck to explain it to him. I just said that he'd understand when he got home. I kind of became obsessed with this thing, watching everything on the disc many times. I mean, all totaled, the whole thing was only about an hour and a half long. But then one day, looking at the back of the DVD case and seeing the total runtime saying 2.5 hours, I remember thinking, Cut to a year later, and it's the summer of 2003, and my friend's mum very kindly brought me along with the family on holiday to stay in a rented house in Waterford, where she provided us with a fuck ton of junk food and money to get games and DVDs at the local rental place. And I remember a very awkward moment where my mate's mum walked in during one particular scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, and we had to try to explain to her that it's not that type of movie. I mean, seriously, what is this unspoken law of the universe which dictates that mothers will always walk in at the worst possible moment of you watching or playing something? Anyway, during that absolutely incredible week of sloth and chocolate and Tenchi Wrath of Heaven, I had brought along the Juice DVD as my mate was also a fan of Korn. I showed him and his brother the bizarre layout of The Asylum, and we proceeded to watch Who Then Now, stuffing our faces with junk and having a proper good time in the process. I went to the bathroom, leaving my mate to navigate the DVD, and when I re-entered the room, I was frozen in place, staring at a menu that I had never seen before. He had found an entire other hour-long documentary. And you know where they'd hid it? In the fucking sound options. That is diabolical. But you know what? I wasn't even mad. To 17-year-old me, this moment right here elevated an already fantastic week to one of the best weeks of my life. We had discovered El Dorado, and my favourite music DVD of all time now felt like a thing of legend. Through the years of watching Finn McKenty's content, and by the way, buddy, I don't care if you only did it for the money. Please come back, dude. I miss you. Through the years of watching his content, one idea he had always pushed is that a band's image, even in heavy metal, was a large contributing factor of whether or not a band would succeed. Sean Cran was of course the master of this when he created Slipknot, fine-tuning every single part of their presentation right down to the tiniest detail. McKenty argued that there was not much inherent star power in 5 dudes who looked like they just walked off the street. And Korn had this concept nailed right from the beginning. Here's a challenge for you. Think of any act you like and see if you can draw a simplified version of the band from memory. It's not just that Korn had a distinct look from other bands, it's that each member had a distinct visual style from each other. And what made it even better is that these 5 individual styles also brought with it 5 very unique characters. Head was the goofball, the quintessential class clown. He could be effortlessly funny with just a look, and there was something about the timbre of his voice that just made my heart melt.
How'd you get your name, Head?
I have a big head.
No, you don't, man.
Yes, I do! Go get me any hat, it won't fit. Except this one, because it's stretchy.
It had this low, sort of somber quality to it, and he always sounded so secure when he spoke.
I can't right now.
For me, he was the epitome of cool, and as a teenager, what I strived to be. Monkey seemed really introverted and shy. I don't know, everything he did came across as so weird, but there was something so adorable about him, from the way he talked to the way he interacted with the other band members, and I always felt like I wanted to give him a hug.
Say something. Something.
And it was fucking cool watching someone not trying to put on some suave front, but embracing that adolescent awkwardness that I'm sure we all hated in ourselves. But I tell you, once he got up on stage and started to play, he got real spooky looking. He was able to let out this nasty, twisted version of himself, and watching that transformation happen back then was mesmerizing. Fieldy's the only one that puts on a facade, and it almost feels like his entire personality is based around this. It sometimes feels like it's pushed so far to the point of being ridiculous, but I think that's the very reason why I fucking love him.
But you didn't know all black people iron? Of course we iron.
I don't know, it's almost like watching a cartoon character in human skin. And look, I know a lot of this is probably just an augmented version of who he really was, and it did feel like fun because he did it with at least some degree of self-awareness. I remember hearing this story of when Korn appeared in South Park, Fieldy wanted his on-screen persona to look tough, and then they ended up making him the Velma character.
Oh no, I lost my glasses!
Being only 13 when he hooked up with Fieldy and Monkey, paired with the fact that he dropped out of high school to pursue his music career, David's personality makes a lot of sense. He has this very endearing kid brother kind of quality, not shy, but definitely quieter than the rest. Not awkward, but he always comes across as less sure of himself when he talks. But in contrast to this, you've got this muscled up groove machine that plays drums with such bite and intensity that it sends chills down your spine. Oh, that fucking drum piece, it's just...
Get me a towel.
Also, I just want to mention, I love that Who That Now included a clip of Korn doing their third ever show, playing a rather different version of Blind. And that brings us to our final member, John. Back in the 90s, it was pretty much unheard of to have a commercial rock band talking about childhood sexual abuse, or having someone sharing their experience in such a raw and unfiltered way. He didn't sugarcoat it or try and wrap it up in some bullshit message of positivity or try and tell us that it would get better. And the fact that he places trauma front and center in his music really made me feel less alone. Much like Jonathan Davis, I also got called fat a lot growing up because yeah, I was and am still quite girly, yet also like John, I turned out to be straight. And it was really nice as a teenager having someone you looked up to just allowing themselves to be as big a sissy as they wanted. Through the light-hearted boyish antics of the Deuce DVD, they don't shy away from John and his issues. They go into how severe his alcoholism became, and there's this really upsetting footage which I'm not going to show of John making himself vomit. He talks about how he would drink so much and wake up the next day shaking, or how he would be so drunk he couldn't sing properly, or how he'd start picking fights with the other members of the band. But we also got to see the beginnings of his sobriety, which he still maintains today. There were so many moments through those early years of Korn that just felt surreal. The ultimate one being the art competition they launched to have a fan design their fourth album cover.
Next thing we know, we've got 75,000 pieces of artwork we have to go through. We thought, oh great, what do we do now? So we had to look through all this artwork and pick the best four.
That's the album cover right there. I'm drunk. You think I could get in there?
Like in the year 2000, this felt insane. Aside from the iconic doll that became the cover for Issues, the other three finalists were used for a variety of other media, and I lovingly displayed the Straight Jackets image by Brad Lambert hanging as a poster on my bedroom wall for many, many years. When I was growing up, there were so many mysteries for me around Korn. I never understood why they put a cover of Cheech and Chong's Earache My Eye as a hidden track at the end of Follow the Leader, or why the fuck that album started with a full minute of silence. Seriously, the first time I played that CD, I got so worried because I thought it was broken. Why did they record a death metal version of Jingle Bells? Why did Jonathan Davis play the bagpipes and wear a kilt? Why did they do a concert performing the entirety of Issues a day before the album came out? Why did John Davis dress up his sister and put her in his place for a band interview? Like, I fucking remember this footage airing on UK MTV and I couldn't figure out why John looked so weird. How did John ever start that scat growling thing or write such a disturbing track about Mr. Rogers or literally name a song Cunt? Where in the fuck did Dookie Booty come from? And the answer to all these questions was really simple. It's because they were Korn. And that's why we loved them. The influence that Korn had on my life growing up was immeasurable. In my early teens, I even tried to do my hair up like heads, and it didn't work out so great. There was a while during my teens where I didn't have any friends. And much like other weird kids, it was extremely comforting having a band like Korn during this period of my life. We didn't love them because they were rock gods. We loved them because they were flawed. And through the many low points of my teenage years, behind this visceral, unhinged music, there were these 5 guys who felt like they cared and made me feel like I mattered.